Welcome to the Modern Sports Show, home of your college athlete, where we are player-led and player-focused. Guys, tonight we are coming with a very, I think, in-depth analysis of a few college football teams going into this 2025-2026 college football season, okay? So, just where we are right now as a program, right? We are still in season 2, kind of mixing it up tonight. We want to provide some different content. We have been doing the player interviews. We have more on the way, still gearing up for the college football season coming up. And guys are in their summer segment. So just trying to be mindful of time arrangements and like my schedule and stuff like that. So still got the player interviews coming. However, just kind of having to take different things into account for that. So like I said, tonight we're going to provide a little different element to the show, just because we are kind of getting closer to the college football season. But before we get into all that, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend, do all that good stuff. And then, man, even before we jump into the actual topics that we have for this evening, I did want to just provide like just some life stuff. So I've been just recently made a move to a different state. And so things in life sometimes, are altered just by what's going on. And this being like my project, and this being something that I've spent and put a lot of time, effort, and energy into, it is everything that I take on as a person, it takes on as well. And so I try my best to keep this going and consistent. And sometimes I fall short just because I am human, but there are different things that I'm having to focus on in life, like myself. And so all the support that my viewers and my audience gives to this, it means the world to me. And I think I'm at 800 and I checked today, I'm at 803 subscribers. And so just that progress, the progress that I've made, I think last year around this time, I was probably at 500 subscribers. And so, man, I'm thankful for every one of you who watch my videos, who interact with my videos, whether it's the player interviews, whether it's the player interviews, or just any content that I have on this channel, because I am dedicated and committed to showing and giving real insight from somebody who played college football to people who are interested in the sport or college athletics at large. I love everything about college athletics, college football to be specific. And so I want to do my best to present that to you all and all the things that college sports mean to me. But then even going deeper into that, right? Today is Sunday at the time of recording, Sunday, July the 20th. And I have some big things coming up for this channel. But at the same time, just in terms of life, right? I was watching Pastor Mike today with Rock City in Birmingham. And I wanted to share this with you all because a mentor of mine encouraged me to start sharing some of the life things that I experienced on the podcast, right? And so something that he spoke on today that was very powerful to me was delay is not denial, it's development. And I think a lot of times in life, and this is a message for the average viewer, this is a message for myself because I needed this today, and especially for the athletes who interact with my stuff in general. A lot of times in life, we have expectations that we want to be met. We have a certain situation, a circumstance we want to step into that we deem favorable. And so we put all our time, effort, energy into getting that, but also we put our faith into that. And that is, praying to God about what it is that we want. and being consistent in those prayers and just thinking about it day in, day night, day in and day and night, just continuing to pour ourselves into whatever it is that we're trying to get to. And then along our journey, we get frustrated, we get down in the dumps about where we are or the progress we've made to get to that goal or that outcome. But delay is not denial, it's development. And so we have to be mindful that right now on that road, on that journey to wherever it is we're going, right? We are not being denied. We are just being developed by God, and our circumstances and our character is being developed. I like to call it character development, actually. Right? When you're going through adversity, when you're facing those hard times, right, your character is being developed. And so that's just something that I thought would be nice to share with you all today, because I'm not sure where you are in life. I know a lot of times I like to stay geared and focused on the topic at hand or the guest I have on the show. And I try to allow the guest space to give whatever perspective they have on life and journey and stuff like that. But I don't think oftentimes I speak on what's going on in my mind on the platform or the things that I'm learning in my perspective. So I just wanted to share that with you all tonight and just, offer some encouragement as we head into a new week. You got it. Stay down, keep grinding, right? My goal is to be on ESPN as an analyst one day, or maybe even blow this channel and this page up to a point where I don't need ESPN and I can do this full time because I love college football. I love college sports. And I just want to do my best job at giving you my perspective from someone who did it. And man, just everything that's going on with this sport, man, it's taking a life of its own this day and age. And so for this particular episode tonight, I want to talk about 3 teams because we are, like I said, heading into the season. It's July. It's July 20th. We're about, 11/31. We're about 40-ish, 50 days away from the start of college football season. And week 1, we got some real big games on August the 30th, August the 31st. And so like this season is going to be packed. It's going to be filled with great games. I cannot wait. And so the 3 teams that we're talking about tonight, 1 is going to be the Tennessee Volunteers. 2, we're going to talk about the Miami Hurricanes. And 3, we're going to be discussing Stanford Cardinals. So only reason I threw Stanford in there is because I don't want to just look at the biggest names or the biggest teams in the sport. I want to do my just due as an analyst and kind of discuss where I see each program and just kind of what they have coming up in their future. And so for starters, Tennessee. So Tennessee obviously finished the season 10-3 last year. I think their biggest win was at home against Alabama. They beat them 24-17 at home. And then I think their worst loss came to Arkansas in a 19-14 bout at Arkansas, right? Arkansas had a pretty good team. I think we'll touch on them at some point throughout the program before we get into the season. And we also have to throw in that playoff loss to Ohio State, which they lost 42-17. Now, I think last year they had a very run-heavy offense with Dylan Sampson. He touched about 1,500 rushing yards, but he also provided some yardage in the pass game. So I think his all-purpose number was around 1,700. But Nico only threw for 16 yards as a redshirt freshman. So I feel like that lack of experience kind of limited their downfield attack. And that we know is kind of contrary to Josh Heupel and his vertical offense scheme, like to stretch those defenses wide and really use from sideline to sideline, and how he kind of aligns his offense and the things he likes to do out of those alignments. Now, I'd say for 2025, I think the quarterback situation at Tennessee is wide open. UCLA transferred Joey Aguilar. He was a former 2-year starter at Appalachian State, and then would transfer to UCLA. And then would transfer out of UCLA once Nico transferred in. So I feel like that was, I said it's kind of crazy how just where we are in college football, because that's almost like a trade in a sense. You got Nico transferring to UCLA from Tennessee, and then you have um, Joey Aguilar transferring from UCLA to Tennessee. So Tennessee to UCLA, UCLA to Tennessee. So I think that's funny. It's almost like a trade in a sense. But Aguilar, he does bring some experience. I think majority of his experience is coming from that group of five level. And so kind of curious to see how he's going to operate at Tennessee, being back on this side of America. So we also have Jake Merklinger. He's a redshirt freshman in that quarterback room at Tennessee. And then we have George McIntyre. He's a true freshman and obviously also in contention for that spot. So something that I feel, or someone that I seen his name kind of got threw out there, was Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback from BYU. Obviously, he's just getting on the other side of his lawsuit case, civil suit type thing with the young woman at BYU. Um, and I hate to see something like that happen. It was found out that the young woman was lying in a sense, but it was consensual, and he ended up breaking the honor code at BYU and had to leave. Now I saw that he also entered the portal. At the same time, I think he was it wasn't he couldn't enter the portal per the rules. He would have to essentially like walk on to a team, and so like that's kind of, I feel like he might be able to bring some experience, but I'm not quite sure how likely it is Tennessee would bring him in. But I think a program, especially now as we get down to the stretch, I think a program who is serious and or who needs serious needs in the quarterback position could bring Jake in, and he might be able to help the offense in a way. Because the majority, I think like it was 66, he was 66% of offensive production at BYU last season. And so, honestly, if he were to go to the group of five level, he's going to tear it up. But I think there are some Power Four schools that could use him now. And I think Tennessee is one of them. So this season, Tennessee's schedule highlights include Syracuse in week 1. They have Georgia at home on September the 13th, Alabama on the road October the 18th, Florida November 22nd at Florida. Now, in my opinion, I feel like Georgia is one of those early tests, and just for my analysis, depending on how they play against Georgia at home, even if it's a close loss, right? That gives me a lot of hope for Tennessee as a program and what they'll be able to do the remainder of the season. Because like they play Georgia in week 2, and so I'm curious not week 2, week 3. I'm curious to see how they do against Georgia, and that'll kind of show me what they'll look like against Alabama at Bryant-Denny. And Alabama obviously kind of on a revenge tour this season, as well as at Florida. And I threw Florida in there as a team because obviously this is not their whole schedule. But I did throw Florida in there because we'll get a good gauge of Florida. We'll obviously know what Florida is by November the 22nd. However, I think Florida, if they can build some morale early in their season, that might lead way to them having a successful year. Now, I'm not saying college football playoff or anything like that, but I think as far as Billy Napier's job security goes, if they can at least win 8 to 9 games this season, which is going to be a tough task for the schedule that they have, if they can at least, I won't even say 8, I'll say between 7 to 9 games, I think that's a real big step for that program, especially with a young quarterback in DJ Lagway. I think that's a real big step for that program, and that's going to kind of get Billy Napier off that hot seat. And I think they can start building something down there in Gainesville. So I'm kind of curious, interested to see how they look this season. But back to Tennessee, I think as far as what they need, what Tennessee needs right now, I think they need more production offensively, okay? Especially at the skill positions. Dylan Sampson is gone, and they didn't have a receiver last year that caught for more than 800 receiving yards. And so I think that is going to be very pivotal for them as a team in their success. Are they going to be able to have a offensive skill group who can go out and make plays against those bigger opponents like Alabama, like a Georgia, because we know that those teams are going to have pieces in their secondaries who are going to be able to match up with anybody in the country. But is Tennessee going to be able to match up against them offensively? That's the bigger question. I think the defense, they bring back Arian Carter and DBs like Andre Tarentine, as well as Rodney Garner, the defensive line coach. He returns, and they've obviously seen a lot of success under him at Tennessee. And so I think defensively, they bring back some good production. I'm probably missing a few names, but they bring back good production. How is the team going to come together? And how are they going to deal with some of these tougher opponents early in the season like Georgia? My prediction for them is 9-3 on the year. I know it's kind of early. Like I said, we're only in July. But I think they lose to Bama, Georgia, and I think those are both games they lose. How they lose is going to determine a potential playoff berth, depending on the strength of losses and like what the SEC looks like later in the season. So I say 9-3, and I also have Florida on here beating them. However, I'm kind of on the fence about that Florida game, and I mean it's not necessarily fair to hold me to something I might say today because things might happen between now and the football season start. But I do have Florida beating them right now. I might change my mind, I might change my opinion, but just kind of looking at things from a glimpse, that's kind of what I look like right now. So 9-3 Tennessee, they lose to Bama, Georgia, and Florida. But depending on how college football looks and how they lose those games, they might still be able to kind of slide into the playoffs. Next, we are with the Miami Hurricanes. So Miami also finished 10-3 last year. Had a rough late season losses to Georgia Tech and Syracuse on the road. I think on the road at both. But I think it was kind of set up for them to lose those games because we saw them barely scraped by Cal, Louisville, and Virginia Tech. They really didn't have any signature wins last year, and that's even with Cam Ward, number 1 overall draft pick at their quarterback position. But this season, Mr. Carson Beck, UGA transfer, takes over at quarterback. So my opinions on this are kind of split on his ceiling because in 2023, we got an elite version of Carson Beck, right? He's making throws. He got them into, like a very good position. And that offense kind of looked like it had steam. But we saw regression from him last season. I don't know what it was. Like, I think that he just struggled, kind of had low confidence. And so, Georgia still was able to make do with a great defense, obviously. But they lose in the Sugar Bowl to Notre Dame. And, that's all she wrote. But this season, right, Miami, they bring back Jordan Lau, Mark Fletcher Jr. returns at running back. Elijah Lofton, he headlines in the tight end room. And then as far as the offensive line goes, I have Inez Cooper, Markel Bell, Francis Mauigua, and TCU transfer James Brockermeyer. And so I think offensively they have some guys to still be able to go out there and do what they need to do, especially in like a weaker ACC. Defensively, they look like defensive end, Ruben Bain, Akeem Messidor to return, Ahmad Moten, Justin Scott. Those are just some guys on their interior. And then in the secondary, they bring back O.J. Frederick Jr., Xavier Lucas, Damari Brown returning from injury. Zachariah Poyser, JSU transfer. And so there are some guys that I think that they're bringing back this season that are going to be able to contribute a lot of success to them. Also brought in Burt Auburn. I saw that today in my research. I said Burt Auburn, the kicker from Texas, brought him in. And, I think that with those two additions, Carson Beck, Burt Auburn, Miami is kind of welcomed them with open arms, coming from situations where their confidence was a little low. So I think them stepping into this opportunity is going to kind of, Cristobal welcome them with open arms, and he's just going to have that, like, guys, you got this, come on. Because I do feel like if they put something together early and they get rolling, especially, I think from an offensive side, they'll be okay. I think for Miami, it's more defensively, and especially their secondary, right? And that's why they brought in a new defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman. I got the job. No, I'm just playing. They brought in Corey Heatherman. He replaces Lance Guidry. And then Zach Etheridge, coming from the University of Houston. Zach Etheridge is somebody who actually recruited my little brother at Auburn. So Zach Etheridge gets the job at Miami. And then you have Will Harris also helping him coach the DBs. So for Miami, their test, in Corey's opinion, from a scheduling standpoint, they have Notre Dame at home, Hard Rock Stadium, on August the 31st. Then they follow that up in the third week of September with Florida at home. FSU, October the 4th away. So I say there's no one make or break game for them, unlike Tennessee. But I think FSU looms, and these teams, and this team should contend. So I feel like Notre Dame is going to be a good test for Miami early on. I think we'll be able to see what type of offense they have after that game, because we know what Notre Dame brings defensively, and what they like to do as far as from a defensive recognition, scheme, playing physical, how those defensive backs and that the defensive back all the way down to the front seven play. So I like to see what Notre Dame does, or how Miami does against Notre Dame on August 31st at home. I put Florida in there. Florida is kind of everybody's kind of like, we're going to see where you at. Even Florida, because I got them, like I said, just a notable game. Not saying that they'll beat Miami by any stretch of the imagination. Not now, at least. However, I think Florida is kind of just like, you have to respect them, right? You have to respect them. And so that's why I have them as one of those games. And then Florida State, also in the same boat with Florida. What do we see FSU becoming, adding Thomas Castellanos and a few of those guys, right? Just in the portal. And what do we see Coach Mike Norvell? How do we see him bouncing back from the season that he had last year? I think they will. I don't think they'll be anything like they were last season. I think it was one of those just forks in the road for Florida State. But I feel like they learned something from it. I feel like they grew from that. And so I'm curious to see how they play Miami on October the 4th. My prediction for Miami, I say 11-1 or 10-2. I have them winning the ACC this year. I think they'll win the ACC, and I think they'll go on a deep run in the college football playoff. So, kind of my predictions for Miami. You let me know what you think. Drop it in the comments. Is Carson Beck going to be the answer? I know Carson Beck has a lot of people that, I don't know. I don't want to say rooting on him to lose or fail, but he got a lot of people against him, just from what I've collected on social media. All right. And then lastly, my third team. And this was a more challenging one, just because it's Stanford is new to the ACC. Okay, they're new to the ACC. And if I'm being frank, I don't even understand how Stanford or Cal fits in. It's the Atlantic Coast Conference. Stanford and Cal is on the Pacific Coast. So I don't know how that makes sense, but whatever the money makes work. So Stanford, they went 3-9 last year. I think their biggest wins were versus Louisville and Syracuse. Those are 3 wins that they got done last year. Cal nearly beat them. And there's no clear team identity to I guess, to reference. So right now they're in a rebuild period. I think going into the year, Elijah Brown is expected to be the starter. He missed most of 2024 due to an injury. And but they do bring in Dylan Risk, UCF transfer quarterback, and I think he could challenge him for that position. They bring back some production with Sam Roche at tight end, 40 receptions, 334 yards, and 2 touchdowns in last season. And they bring back running back Micah Ford as he could emerge as RB1 in the crowded room. Colin Wright on the defensive side of the ball has 45 tackles, 5 pass deflections, and 3 INTs in 2024. I said team identity, sparse. I don't know, what Stanford will be this year. I think their goal, just to build on it, they're in rebuild mode. So their goal is, I feel like 5-7 to a 500 season. So 5-7, 6-6. And I think with their schedule, they can do that. But part of me wanting to bring Stanford to the discussion was because now in the day and age with general managers on a college football roster, right? Andrew Luck is now their GM. Okay. Frank Reich is an interim head coach coming into the year. He signed a 1-year deal. And him and Luck both made it very clear that this was just a 1-year thing. And he didn't look to be the coach of Stanford long term. However, right, depending on the success they have this year, maybe things could change. Or he could still just be a placeholder. A few names that were mentioned for this job: Pep Hamilton, he's a former OC from Stanford and an NFL assistant. And then also up-and-comer Danielson at Boise State. I think Danielson was a name at Boise State that I feel like holds some serious weight. And so I know Boise is winning. He's like, after they lose their coach, I think the season before last, he steps in. They finish the season strong. I think make it to a bowl game, win their bowl game. And then to come into this year, and you got Ashton Genty doing what he did at Boise State. And then for Boise State to go to the college football playoff and really contend and compete with Penn State in that, first round, second round of the college football playoff, I think he is going to be one of those emergent names as a young head coach in college football. Maybe, right, like we saw in the NFL, you might start seeing younger college football coaches. Just a thought, just an idea. So I feel like for this Stanford team this season, if they can just kind of get some cohesion going, just build a foundation in this interim year under Frank Reich, I think they go in a good direction with that. And come in and maybe add someone else to the mix to help them continue to develop. Because I feel like if Andrew Luck is as good as a GM as he was a football player, and understanding personnel, understanding how things fit together, I think he might be able to actually build Stanford back up. That was really the only reason I wanted to bring Stanford into the discussion, is because with Andrew Luck being their GM, having someone with the know-how, with the real football mind, he might be able to rebuild this program to what it was when he was playing football there. So, like always, if it happens, you heard it here first on the Modest Sports Show. Guys, that is all we have for tonight. I appreciate you for watching and tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you all on the next video.